that all men have inalienable rights to think freely, to talk freely, to write freely their own opinions, and to counter or utter or write upon the opinions of others.
This is from the Creed of the Church of Scientology. Hey everybody, I'm Holly, aka the ScientoloGeek, and today I want to take you back to a protest that I participated in at the New Haven Church of Scientology in Connecticut, also known as the New Haven Org. During that protest, I brought up different problems with the church using various quotes from policy letters, technical bulletins, and lectures. Today, I want to provide a full list of points that I have so far, some quote related and some not. I've added new points since the protest, and hopefully by sharing this video, other protesters and auditors may use these points in their own demonstrations. Maybe these will get through some Scientology heads, even if just to plant a single seed of doubt. Feel free to rephrase these however you want, as a lot of them are directed towards current members. I want to thank Fluffer Squirrel UK for sharing this protest out, and thanks to Natalie Webster for shouting out the video on her channel. Without any further ado, let's get started. HCO Policy Letter 22 March 1965 titled Current Promotion and Org Program Summary Membership Rundown. Hubbard sets the lifetime membership fee at $75, which adjusts from inflation to about $735 today. How can David Miscavige and the IAS justify charging $5,000 for the same membership, especially when the adjusted fee for an annual membership aligns with current inflation rates? HCO Policy Letter 1 September 1965 titled Membership Policies. Why is membership money held in IAS reserves when policy states that membership funds are supposed to be used for dissemination at the org where the membership was sold? HCO Policy Letter 24 February 1964 titled Org Programming. Quote,
If the org slumps, don't engage in fundraising or selling postcards or borrowing money. Every time I myself have sought to solve finance or personnel in other ways than Scientology, I have lost out. So I can tell you from experience that org solvency lies in more Scientology, not patented combs or fundraising barbecues.
Why is there fundraising when Hubbard specifically advises against it? HCO Policy Letter 12 March 1975 titled The Ideal Org. Hubbard describes an ideal org as having, quote,
enough space to train, process, and administrate without crowding.
There's no mention of needing massive overfunded renovations like those Miscavige promotes. Considering many orgs are currently underutilized, shouldn't their ideal buildings be smaller rather than larger and more expensive? From the Anatomy of the Human Mind Congress, 31 December 1960, titled The Genus of Dianetics and Scientology. At roughly 42 minutes 45 seconds in, Hubbard cautioned against placing too much importance on buildings, stating, quote,
when buildings get important to us, for God's sake, some of you born revolutionists, will you please blow up central headquarters?
How does this align with Miscavige's current emphasis on expensive new buildings for orgs? HCOB 11 December 1964, Issue 2, titled Processes. Routine 0B is required for anyone, regardless of age, who wants to train as an auditor on grade 0. What is particularly concerning is that children who aspire to become auditors must go through this process, which involves asking,
what would you be willing to tell me about blank?
Subjects involved are not considered acceptable for standard social communication and can include graphic sexual content. This practice, intended to teach composure in discussing potentially embarrassing subjects, can be traumatic for children. How does the church justify subjecting children to these abusive and traumatizing subjects, especially when the church obsessively makes sure that they understand the acts being mentioned? HCOB 24 February 1972, CS Series 71A, called Word Clearing OCAs. If a PC fully understood and was word cleared on the OCA, their answers would be more accurately interpreted, reducing bias and assumptions. Why is it acceptable for PCs to proceed without this clarity, potentially affecting the accuracy and fairness of the evaluation process? Newcomers are told they're welcomed into Scientology regardless of sexual orientation. In Dianetics, Book 2, Chapter 5, titled Psychosomatic Illness, Hubbard states, quote,
the sexual pervert, and by this term Dianetics, to be brief, includes any and all forms of deviation in Dynamic 2, such as homosexuality, lesbianism, etc., and all down the catalog of Ellis and Kraft-Ebing, is actually quite ill physically.
This is also in the newest version of the audiobook. Why does the church lie about its views on gay people when Dianetics calls them sexual perverts? From LRH's essay on integrity, quote,
Personal integrity is knowing what you know. What you know is what you know, and to have the courage to know and say what you have observed.
Scientologists who report negative experiences face backlash, being labeled as mistaken, lying, or having overts they themselves have committed. True integrity means acknowledging issues without placing blame on those who report them. From Scientology's creed, quote,
That all men have inalienable rights to think freely, to talk freely, to write freely their own opinions, and to counter or utter or write upon the opinions of others.
Members face consequences for negative comments but are free to share positive ones. If Scientology truly values personal and spiritual freedom, it should allow all viewpoints and not just those it deems favorable. If Scientology has the technology to terminatedly handle suppression, and if communication is the universal solvent, how come Scientologists can't have an honest conversation with critics? If staff are always at fault for stopping Scientology from expanding, and it's never management or the church's public reputation, you may be experiencing thought control. This one's specifically directed towards New Haven, but if you want to direct it towards any other ideal orgs, feel free. The location for New Haven's ideal org was purchased over 20 years ago. If the church is truly expanding and prospering, why has the building not been renovated yet? The supreme test of a Thetan is his ability to make things go right. When you are trying your best as staff to get Scientology to expand, but things still aren't working, it's time to realize that you are not the problem. If the auditor messes up and needs to do additional auditing to fix something they caused, why should the PC have to lose money from his intensive? If Scientology actually cared about the PCs and not just about money, why should a PC have to pay when the church f***ed up? Hubbard states that the only reason people blow are because of their own overts and misunderstoods. Let me provide a counterexample. If you're working at a job and your boss is abusive or demanding the impossible, a normal employee wouldn't tolerate it. A normal employee would not let themselves be abused in an uncontrollable situation. Abusive situations lead to people leaving. Ethics protection shields productive individuals who interbulate an area. If someone is out tech or off policy but productive, they may still cause issues. All disruptive behavior warrants ethics actions regardless of their productivity. When you are told that no relationship is more important than that of you and the church, you may be experiencing relationship control. There is a reason they want you to work grueling hours. COB understands that with free time comes reflection. With free time comes contemplation and cognitions about your own life. By restricting your free time, they're stopping you from fully contemplating whether or not the group is good for you. Open-mindedness is valuable, as it involves learning and updating beliefs based on new truths. Hubbard's KSW policy fosters closed-mindedness, discouraging research and learning that challenge existing beliefs. How does it feel to hear your stats are never enough, no matter what you do? Constantly being told your efforts fall short is painful. I understand you're trying your best. Feeling inadequate isn't your fault. The pressure causes self-degradation over things beyond your control. When leaving the group leads to being told that your relationships in eternity are threatened in order to try and keep you, you may be experiencing calculated mental manipulation. How can Scientology promote free thinking if problem solving is based on,
what would Ron do?
Instead ask, what would I do? True freedom means thinking for yourself, not imitating LRH. HCOB 11 August 1978, called Model Session, states the PC sits furthest from the door. This setup, similar to police interrogations, is said to give the auditor control, but also makes the PC feel vulnerable and helpless. If you've ever felt stuck or helpless in an auditing session, consider leaving. The following are most of the points from the Code of Honor and how the church contradicts them. Quote,
Never desert a comrade in need, in danger, or in trouble.
Scientology's practice of disconnection, as mentioned in HCOB 10 September 1983, has caused the countless severing of ties between family members and other friends outside of the church, purely because they have a differing opinion. Quote,
Never withdraw allegiance once granted.
This point can be interpreted by society to mean that you are not allowed to change your mind. This is not freedom of thought. If a person enters a destructive group and wants to leave, this point in the code is a control mechanism to keep them mentally trapped.
Quote, Never desert a group to which you owe your support.
If the person does not want to be part of the group, they should be able to leave if they wish. No guilt tripping, shaming, just a clean exit from the group. Whether you owe your support to a group or not is subjective, and in the church's view, involves financially exploiting the members for as much as they can. Quote,
Never disparage yourself or minimize your strength or power.
the only power they have over staff and Scientologists is the power that they let them have. Quote,
Never compromise with your own reality.
if you see an outpoint, speak out. Do not let anyone intimidate you into silence. Also, the church's insistence on accepting Hubbard's teachings without question, even if they contradict scientific or historical facts, also counts as compromising of your reality. Quote,
Never permit your affinity to be alloyed.
the church's control over the personal relationships and emotions of its members is in major conflict with this point. Quote,
Do not give or receive communication unless you yourself desire it.
if you do not wish to talk with someone, if you do not wish to be regged, if you are trying to leave and are sick of constantly being contacted by the church, you have the ultimate right to block and ignore them. You do not have to answer them. You have the right to say no. Quote,
Your self-determinism and your honor are more important than your immediate life.
it's not self-determinism when you're constantly being hounded for money or if you're being sent to ethics. If you do not wish to take part in the church, then don't. Your self-determinism and honor is more important than wasting your life away in an organization that may not really have your best interests at heart. Quote,
Your integrity to yourself is more important than your body.
don't neglect your own health or well-being so you can remain in good standing with the church or so you can continue working for pennies on staff or in the SO. Quote,
Never regret yesterday. Life is in you today and you make your tomorrow.
make your tomorrow by leaving and not letting them dictate how you live your life. Quote,
Never fear to hurt another in a just cause.
just is entirely subjective, and what the church considers a just cause has caused much more harm than good. This can and does lead to abusive tendencies in members, especially against protesters. Also, the church's fair game policy has led to harassment, stalking, and intimidation of former members. Quote,
Be your own advisor, keep your own counsel, and select your own decisions.
don't let someone or something else run your life. Make your own decisions for your own reasons, not because other people want you to make them. Quote,
Be true to your own goals.
don't let the church's demands and expectations override your personal goals and aspirations in life. What scientific process requires writing a success story to proceed, especially with obligatory thanks to LRH and COB? This idolization is similar to high control groups and North Korea. Why are payments for courses and services called donations if they're mandatory? The church operates more like a business than a religion. When your only information sources are L. Ron Hubbard and the church, isn't that biased? If Ron's research was truly scientific and considered contradictory information, why can't you do the same to form your own opinion? True informed consent means knowing all the facts. Before joining Scientology, you were only told the positives. Consider both sides before making a decision. The phrase,
No case on post.
prevents staff and Sea Org members from expressing emotions. With little free time and little opportunity for auditing, there's no healthy outlet for feelings. If a family member dies, grief is natural, yet members are not allowed to grieve while they're working. Suppressing human emotion can lead to more intense, delayed reactions later on. The following are characteristics of a suppressive person and how Hubbard himself fits them. Quote,
He or she speaks in very broad generalities.
LRH often uses broad generalities in his writings and lectures, often discounting and demonizing entire fields of scientific research based on a few faulty points. He goes into brief detail about what certain fields are doing wrong or how they're behaving, but never goes into precise detail about the who, what, when, where, why, and how. These generalities are also used when referring to critics and former members, often using terms like religious bigot, merchant of chaos, SP, or apostate. Quote,
Such a person deals mainly in bad news, critical or hostile remarks, invalidation, or general suppression.
LRH frequently spoke critically of those who oppose him or his teachings, often in harsh and invalidating terms. He also fearmongers about the WOG world and traditional mental health practices. Quote,
The antisocial personality alters to worsen communication when he or she relays a message or news. Good news is stopped and only bad news, often embellished, is passed along.
Hubbard often portrayed himself and Scientology as perpetual victims of persecution, exaggerating or inventing threats to keep followers dependent and fearful of the outside. There were many conspiracies that Hubbard peddled in order to keep his flock in line. Quote,
"A characteristic and one of the sad things about an antisocial personality is that it does not respond to treatment or reform."
Hubbard's response to critical reports and legal issues was to often double down on his stances, rather than addressing and correcting potential problems. Quote,
"Surrounding such a personality, we find cowed or ill associates or friends who, when not driven actually insane, are yet behaving in a crippled manner in life, failing, not succeeding."
Many close associates of Hubbard, especially in the Sea Org, reportedly lived under extreme stress and poor conditions, and they still do. Numerous Sea Org accounts describe the abusive working and living conditions as well as the pressure they faced while employed. Staff as well. Quote,
"The antisocial personality habitually selects the wrong target."
Hubbard often blames staff for why the church is not expanding, never mind the already poor reputation that Scientology has in the public eye. He also blamed external enemies for many of Scientology's problems, diverting attention from internal issues, and his frequent targeting of psychiatry, the media, and perceived enemies is cited as evidence of this trait. These are the basic reasons for antisocial behavior. Quote,
"He has a hidden terror of others."
Hubbard's extensive security measures and his periods of seclusion, particularly in his later years, might be seen as indicative of a deep-seated fear of others. His directives to aggressively handle perceived enemies of Scientology could be viewed as manifestations of this hidden terror. Quote,
"Everyone else is an enemy to be covertly or overtly destroyed."
critics argued that Hubbard's policies often positioned those outside of Scientology, especially critics and ex-members, as enemies to be neutralized. His writings frequently portrayed external entities, such as psychiatrists and governments, as antagonistic forces conspiring against Scientology. Quote,
"Fixation that survival itself depends on keeping others down or keeping people ignorant."
Hubbard's control over the flow of information within Scientology and his emphasis on OT material secrecy was a way for him to keep his members in a controlled environment.
When such a personality goes insane, the world is full of Martians or the FBI, and each person met is one of these.
Accounts from former members detail that Hubbard exhibited paranoid tendencies, more in his later years. He believed that government agencies were conspiring against him and Scientology. This led to the establishment of the Guardian's Office, or what is now known as the Office of Special Affairs. Quote,
"Self-criticism is a luxury the antisocial cannot afford."
Hubbard rarely admitted faults or mistakes publicly and has maintained an image of infallibility. Doubt is normal. Many staff, public, and SO members question the tech, Hubbard, Miscavige, and Scientology's operations, but stay silent to avoid being reported on. Every Scientologist occasionally feels something isn't right or is off source. You've been taught to suppress these thoughts, believing they indicate a flaw in you. Doubt is a sign of a rational mind. Your concerns are normal. Listen to your intuition. In Introduction to Scientology Ethics on page 6, LRH states,
"I have found that man cannot be trusted with justice. Getting into police hands is a catastrophe in its own right in many places, even when one is merely the plaintiff, much less the accused."
This distrust of external legal systems discourages Scientologists from seeking help outside the organization. The criminal trial of Danny Masterson demonstrates that Scientology ethics failed to rehabilitate a proving that internal justice is ineffective in holding perpetrators accountable. I want to thank Fluffer Squirrel UK for sending out the video of the protest, and I want to thank Natalie Webster for showing a piece of it on her channel. Hopefully these protest points can be of use to anyone who decides to obviously use them. If you guys like what I do, click comment, like, subscribe, do what you gotta do to get the word out about this channel and spread it around and get this video out to as many protesters as possible, because if they even use just one point, good. That's all I really care about, to be honest, is that these points get put to good use elsewhere. If you want to get a hold of me, feel free to email me at scientologeek@gmail.com, especially if you want an invite to the Google Drive. If you are not part of my Discord, feel free to sign up, say hi, and I will put that link in the description as well. I will talk to all of you later. See ya.